Thank you for joining us for our Faith Health Connection on exploring dementia support in congregations. I'm Krista Westervelt. I'm the Associate Director of Healthy Aging here at PHW. And before we get started, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Arlisha Simmons to open us in prayer.
Good morning or good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Let us center our hearts for a moment of prayer and reflection. Oh, holy God, we thank you for this day that you have made, and we thank you for this day that we observe as Earth Day. We do recognize that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And so while we thank you for the flora and the fauna, we also thank you for the people and for the family members who are navigating dementia. God, we pray now for those who are navigating various stages of dementia. We pray for their comfort as well as their pace. We pray for caregivers, and we ask that you would give them comfort and peace and strength and wisdom and knowledge and information and even respite as they journey alongside those whom they love. We pray for family members who must communicate and all the shifting dynamics that could possibly occur. And God, we pray for our congregations and faith communities that through this moment, as well as other times of education, we would learn more about the challenges as well as the opportunities to be good stewards and to serve those we are in community with. And so, God, we thank you for blessing this time we will spend together. Be with our speakers. We are grateful for the work that they do for families across this state. Give them strength and do whatever it is that they need in their own personal lives, as well as in the ministry that you've called them to serve people, so that we can all navigate this uncertain space of change and transition. This is our prayer. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Arlisha. So now I'd like to introduce our guests. We have Lisa Levine and Dee Dee Harris from the Dementia Alliance of North Carolina who are joining us today. And they take care of education and take care of families for the Dementia Alliance. And we're so delighted to have them with us this morning. And so I'm just going to turn it over to Lisa and Dee Dee. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having us today. We're excited to be here. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. So Dee Dee and I collectively, we figured out actually yesterday, I think we've been here, it's more than 35 years now, maybe closer to 40 years together, serving the people of North Carolina. And we're excited to come to all of you because we often work one-off with churches and faith communities on ideas how specifically different congregations can support people living with dementia, families living with dementia. So I'm going to share sort of our collective ideas and thoughts, and Dee Dee will join in with me at some point. And then we would love for you all to ask questions in the chat or share programs that you're aware of, maybe that we don't get a chance to talk about today. Because we know every congregation is different, what they can do is different. And also all of our dementia caregivers are different and individual and need different supports. So I'm not going to talk specifically about Alzheimer's or dementia, but I will ask Dee Dee to put in the chat our website and also our email addresses, so that if you have further questions, please feel free to reach out to us, go on our website. We also have some free downloadable materials and also YouTube videos on there for education. So we're happy for you to use those or share those as resources as well. So in thinking about what we can do for people with dementia, living with dementia, there are sort of two categories here. One is the person living with dementia, and one is the caregiver or the family or the friends or the neighbor or whoever that is. And so whether you have 5 minutes in your congregation or 5 hours or 5 weeks or 5 months that you can devote to this, we'd like to share some things that we know have happened in different faith communities around the state already, and perhaps give you all some ideas that you can use or share. So I'm just going to sort of go through a list of things. I'll expand some, and Dee Dee, I would love for you to share with me as I go through this. And again, please feel free to ask us questions in that chat if you would like. But one of the first things, and I'm sure all of you do this in one way or another, but is to have some kind of senior ministry, caring committee, whatever you want to call it, where you can check in on families, and that might be people living with dementia who are on their own at home, or people who, families that have a loved one with dementia that you know they're caring for. Now, that loved one may live at home with them or may live in a memory care community, but one great way is just to notice people who maybe were attending services or other events that your congregation is having, and now you're not seeing them anymore. And we know that could be for a lot of different reasons, but we also know from caregivers that often going to church doesn't work anymore. That could be for a number of reasons. It could be that the person doesn't do well in an environment where there's a lot of other people around. It could be, honestly, that their loved one living with dementia can't get ready to get there in the morning because morning's not a good time for that person anymore. It could be that they might have some behaviors that sort of make it embarrassing for them to be there. And it could be that they're feeling the stigma of dementia. There used to be a big stigma with cancer, and we didn't talk about cancer. We whispered it, or we said the C word or whatever. And now there's ads on TV all the time, but we don't really talk about Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia. And so there is a great stigma as well. We, a couple years ago, I'll just give you a quick story. A couple years ago, we had a woman who called us from Eastern North Carolina and said, I'd really like to attend this program, but I can't drive all the way there. So I need a ride. And we said, okay, well, is there someone in your neighborhood? Is there someone in your church? And she said, oh, I can't tell anyone at church. We don't want them to know that my husband has dementia. And I said, well, if I can't tell anyone, I can't get you a ride to the event. So I can't help you in that way. And unfortunately, she just would never let us help her because she didn't want anyone to know what was going on with that family. So it really is important to have that connection, to reach out, to even be sending cards or making calls or sending emails and checking in on those people. And I think that's sort of one of the quick things that we can do there. Another thing that we can do is we can have volunteers within the congregation that are willing to go to someone's home to sit or stay with the person who has dementia, to let their caregiver either attend church events or to have a break, to have time to go to the doctor, to get their hair and their nails done, to go for a walk even, and be away from their loved one for a little while. A lot of times when you ask caregivers, and this could be any caregiver, how can we help? That's what we all want to do. We're all here because we want to help those folks. But when you say, how can we help? They have no idea. They're really overwhelmed and they have so much going on and so much to do. They don't know the answer to that. And so instead of that, saying, we have someone, I can come over and I can be at your house for an hour and I can stay while you go and do things. So we're giving them a very specific suggestion that could be very helpful to them. And the person living with dementia may or may not be someone who wants to have a conversation with you. But it doesn't mean that you can't be just in the house and keep them safe. Dee Dee, did you want to add something to that?
Well,
you probably were going to touch base, but sometimes it's even, since they're maybe a little nervous about letting you in, offer to go by CVS, pick up the prescriptions, offer to go by the grocery store and pick up some food. There's a lot of little things that's not always, the respite is great, but if you're not comfortable with something, there is still little things that can be done, that mow their grass. You know, there's just all kinds of little things that also can be very helpful to a caregiver.
Thanks, Dee Dee. And a lot of times we may have within the congregation things we don't think about, like someone who's very good at home repairs, someone who could help check out the dishwasher if it's not working well, so that that caregiver doesn't have to get someone to come in and do that. So if we are talking to them and we know that they're having an issue in the house, you know, we can say, oh, so-and-so knows how to do that. Let's see if we can connect them and take care of that issue for them, instead of them having to hunt down a repair person. Another thing that we can do actually within services or other events that we're doing is we can keep in mind that we can adapt current programs for people living with dementia. Now, this might depend on how many are in the congregation, but if we offer some shorter services, some services that rely more on sort of traditional prayers, services that include more music, those are things that people living with dementia can really relate to. Dementia takes us back in time. So our short-term memory is affected first, and then more recent memory. So we really go back to when we were younger, when we were more in childhood or early adulthood. And so if you're playing more traditional hymns, for example, if I'm going back in time, that may be what I grew up with. And so I may be able to relate to that more. Also, music can reach parts of the brain. When people are deeply affected by dementia, we can still get a lot of emotion. And sometimes we can even use music to help people come out of that for a little while and share and speak. And so any kind of additional music programs that we can offer. Also during visits, if we're visiting with someone, sometimes you might have someone who's hesitant to volunteer and to visit someone living with dementia because they don't know what to say and they don't know what to do. But prayer is always wonderful. Old traditional kinds of readings and hymns, and definitely that music piece. If we know the person's background a little bit, we know we can get that from their caregiver. Usually we can sort of personalize what we're bringing to them, and that can really reach past all of the memory problems and bring out the heart, bring out the spiritualness in that person. So that is a huge thing. Another thing that you could consider doing, and which is a little more involved, is hosting a support group. Support groups are amazing things. Dee Dee had a support group this morning with a bunch of caregivers, and we offer support group training online, and then support groups are offered both online and in person. So you could start an online support group, and it can start for 3 people. It doesn't have to be a really big thing. It could be you get together 3 caregivers. It doesn't have to be every week. It could be once a month if that works better for those folks. Do you want to talk a little more about support groups?
Yeah, in all the things that we do here, I think support groups are probably one of the most impactful things that we do. Our education people love, but it's something about coming together with other people that are going through similar journeys. And so, like I said, I just had one this morning. It's really probably my favorite thing that I do. And sometimes it's at this point, it's just making the coffee and having maybe a snack, and then they take it over, which is great. But it's just watching people cry with each other, share with each other. It's just magical what you see in there. So to me, like Lisa said, we do provide a training, You don't have to be a professional. You don't even have to have the experience of a family member. If you have those, great. You just have to have a heart to want to do it, and be willing to provide the space. And so I would love to talk to anybody who might be interested in doing that.
And you don't have to know everything. You don't have to have all the answers to facilitate a group. It's more about reaching people where they are and giving them that support in the moment and helping reduce isolation so that they're talking with other people who are going through what they're going through. Whether you have or not, you don't have to have gone through things like this to be that person to facilitate those conversations. Now, maybe you're saying we don't have anybody right now that could lead a group. Well, maybe you could offer a caregiver coffee. I spoke at a church last week, and they have a support group, but something else the caregivers decided they wanted was once a week or every other week, the church offers coffee, and everybody comes and gets together in the lobby of the church and just talks and chats. It's open to any caregiver, not just dementia caregivers. So they have parents of children living with developmental disabilities. They have all kinds of caregivers there. And sometimes it turns into a support group, and sometimes it's just small groups of 2 or 3 people introducing themselves and saying hello and getting out for 45 minutes or an hour. And again, that we call that respite. It's giving people a break. But you could also do that for people living with dementia. If you have people that are early in recently diagnosed or very early on in the disease, you could do that for people living with dementia as well. We tend to find that those folks, while they need that comfort and support from us, a lot of times by the time we're interacting with the family, their loved one is more in the middle stages of dementia. And so they're not maybe going to be coming out and doing group things as much. We do have some ideas for that though. But maybe a support group is not for them. Maybe a coffee is not for them. Dee Dee, however, for her support group, some of the ladies in the group I know have brought the gentleman to the support group with them, and the gentlemen that had dementia have gone in a room next door and just had coffee and just shared while the wives were in support group. So I think that's an amazing thing. Another thing that you may or may not have heard of before, which is an incredible experience, is what we call a memory cafe. And a memory cafe is an event where the person living with dementia and their caregiver, often a spouse, but not always a spouse, maybe an adult child or whoever, can come to a social event, and it's geared for both people. It's okay. We know people with dementia are going to come, so we know they may not say the right thing, or they may not do exactly the right societal thing, but all of that is okay because the event is for all of these folks. And some organizations do that by serving supper to these folks. Sometimes they'll have entertainment with that. Dee Dee, you want to talk to them a little bit about what they do at Good Shepherd?
Yeah, I attend the one at Good Shepherd, which is probably one of the first ones we've had in this area. And they do have the aspect of providing dinner with it, where some may just have coffee and, like you said, different times. But this one meets for an hour and a half, and they do provide the dinner. The church provides the dinner. What I've loved about it is they've used their youth as volunteers to actually be the servers for the dinner. And, just like with children, youth, it just sparks, all of us, and especially seniors or people coming. So the youth are the ones who provide all the service and things like that. With Good Shepherd, they always have a theme. So, it could be, of course, some of them are like Valentine's Day and things like that, but they always try to have a theme. And so they have decorations that go around that. They have some decorations on the table, and sometimes even the meal will go with it, just depending on what what it's about. If we're doing something that's celebrating Mexico, we might have Mexican that night. So, but they have a nice little. You're at tables of 8. The design is social, pure social, with other people. And then there's always some type of a facilitator or a volunteer that's sitting at the table also helping engage the conversation. And after dinner, then there's always some type of music, whether it be somebody singing or dancing or playing the instrument, but there's always ends with some type of music, which then just leads everybody out on a good note, because music usually always brings joy. So it's just a really neat time. And if anybody ever, there is ones out there throughout the state that at different places that would always welcome people to visit.
And every memory cafe is different. It just depends on what can be offered and the interest of the folks that are there. Some of them get together for lunch. Some do all out, like the one Dee Dee mentioned. And it's just a place. I know several of the folks Dee has told me when she comes back, a couple was able to dance together, and they had not danced together in many, many years. And the person that had dementia was very, very confused. But at this event, it was just normal, and people were dancing and coming together, and they were able to experience something socially that they had not in years, and it was really something that they enjoyed. And I know the caregivers can often relax at these events because they don't have to worry about their person. They don't have to worry about what they say or do. So it is very much a relief, I think, to them in some of these cases, but also enjoyable as well. Another thing, sort of similar to Memory Cafe, but a little bit different, is sort of a caregiver day out program. And this might be where you have some volunteers, and caregivers can drop their loved one off to spend an hour with you, and their caregiver can go and do something. Or it might be a half-day event where you have volunteers that are trained to help people with dementia, and you have events planned, and the folks can come in, get a meal, do activities together, sing together, and their loved one can stay if they want, or they can leave knowing that their person is cared for and they can go do other things. That's a little bit of a bigger commitment, I feel like, than a memory cafe. But you could even do this if you had 3 people in your community that needed something and you wanted to get them together. We also are seeing more cases of people living with dementia who don't have family support, people who are on their own, people who either are widowed or maybe were never married in the first place, and they don't have family nearby, and they're very, very isolated. And then on top of all of that, they get dementia, and they need people to walk through this with them. And so that might be extra visits. It might be extra calling on this person. It may be a group of folks from the church that become the care team and offer all the supports that this single person needs to get through their dementia. And we've done that. Dee Dee's done that personally, and we've seen more and more folks that need that interaction. And we find often that they're still living at home alone, but they not well. They don't want help. They maybe think they don't need help, but sometimes you may see that you think they need a little bit more help, and then you can call an organization like Dementia Alliance, Memory Care in Asheville. There's a lot of other organizations around the state that we could help you find as well, that we could give you ideas of maybe how to help those individuals. But we are seeing some of those situations where we have people who are all alone in trying to navigate this. Another thing that a few churches have done is they have come up with a respite fund that can provide some financial assistance to caregivers when they have an emergency and need a paid caregiver to come in and take care of their loved one. Maybe someone has to have a surgery and they're going to be in the hospital for a couple of days, and they really can't afford to have a caregiver come in around the clock. There are some financial services out there. The state provides some. We have a little bit at Dementia Alliance, but that is another thing that you could have a respite fund at the church that monies go into to help in those situations. Another thing you could do is have a library of resources. You may have that already for all kinds of other things, but making sure that we have dementia supports. We list senior centers that have programs for folks, both caregivers and people living with dementia. Maybe brochures and materials from different organizations in your immediate area who can help provide support. Sometimes the caregiver just doesn't know where to turn to first, and you probably have vetted those resources or at least collected some of them. You've talked to the person who brought them by, and so the church can give a little bit of insight to those things. Another thing to think about is just offering some dementia education to the congregation. Dee Dee goes out and talks to support groups. I go out and talk to groups. We have other folks that do this around. If we can't come to your area, we can help you find someone. And just even having a 1 hour dementia education or dementia workshop can really help people feel more connected, get more information. And I often find there's a couple of different types of attendees. There's the attendees who have been through the whole dementia journey with a loved one, and they're sort of coming for reassurance that we did the right thing when we were helping grandma 2 years ago. There's the person who's going through it now. And then there's the people that want to learn all they can because it might happen in the future. We often have spousal caregivers, adult children, and then we have long distance caregivers too. I have a lot of people that come that say, we live in North Carolina, but our parents live in another state and we just want to learn all we can here to find out what we can do there, and then if we should move them or what that care should look like. So consider, having, and that's a great place to start too, honestly, because if someone maybe isn't ready for a support group or even to acknowledge that there's issues at home, you may have an hour-long discussion. And I find often a lot of people will come up to me afterward and say, it's so nice that you did this. I haven't really talked to anybody about that yet. And then I can connect them directly with someone in the congregation who can offer support to them. And then we can look at those other avenues that we've talked about to make sure that we are helping that person. But sometimes an education event is less scary to come out and start sharing our story than some other events. And then another idea, and I know this happens a lot, but there are many congregations that will provide services or support to people living with dementia and memory care communities or in assisted livings. So going out and you can have just people from the congregation that can go out and do this as well. It doesn't have to be official clergy to lead this type of service. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. But someone who routinely will, say some prayers, lead some songs, that type of thing, that can give a real connection for those people who are feeling isolated in memory care. And you'll have a lot of other people join you, as well as the people who maybe were in your congregation, and you may have people from other religions that come and join as well, and that's okay. But you're really, sometimes we can't have conversations with people living with dementia anymore that make a lot of sense, but we can reach that spiritual need in them when we can't reach other things. So visiting with those folks and just singing with them or praying with them can really do so much for them, and also for their caregivers to know that you were there. So I went through a lot of information really quickly because I know we don't have a lot of time. I will send out, I'll share with Krista a flyer with all of this information on it later, just to give you all some ideas and suggestions. I do see a couple things in the chat. Brad Alexander mentioned if the patient is older, reading from the King James Version of the Bible might help them connect. Absolutely, it might. And you might be surprised that people maybe who can't connect conversationally can sometimes read along, or you may be stimulating the brain so that you're going along after a while, and then they can repeat some with you or mimic some with you. And then Lisa wrote, Dementia Partners AVL Inc. offers support groups in Buncombe County, which is fantastic. And on the Dementia Alliance website, we also have a listing by county of all the support groups that we work with. And so you can go on there and look up your specific county if you would like. And Dee Dee and I did put our email addresses in the chat for you. If you are interested or have more questions, we please encourage you. Anybody else have any questions or any other programs that they really want to share? I would love to hear more about what you're doing in the couple of minutes we have left.
I think Donna has raised her hand, and also there was one that came directly to me and to Arlisha, and so I'll share that out, but we can have Donna first.
Hey, good morning. I'm Donna Hill. I'm with the Partners in Health and Wholeness Initiative at the North Carolina Council of Churches. And I just wanted to share a resource that was helpful for me. My dad passed away last year, ultimately from lung cancer, but he was living with Lewy body dementia, which he was suffering greatly with. And if you're on social media, there is a speech language pathologist who has a page on Instagram and on Facebook, and it's called Be Light Care. So BELIGHT CARE, Light Care. And she shares videos and talks a lot about different kinds of dementia and how to address certain issues that present with dementia and things like that. And her videos were super helpful to me when I was my dad's caretaker, and helping me to learn how to react to certain situations and how to work through certain things, and just all different kinds of education and information. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you so much, Donna. I actually wrote that down so I can check it out. I appreciate that. We're always looking for new resources. Anyone else?
Well, let's see. Arlisha had a comment in the chat that I also was related to a question I had, but that I was also going to share another person's question. Arlisha says, I have done a pastoral visit with an elder who was defiant and nonverbal before we arrived, but they quoted scripture with us and sang a hymn as we gave them communion. The family almost didn't allow us in because of her behavior, but they were comforted after we left. And so that kind of, that's lovely. And so that kind of speaks to a question I had written down. And then again, I'll share the other question that that came across. But what are some other things that ministers and lay ministers could keep in mind and be mindful of when they're making pastoral care visits like that?
Dee Dee, do you want to add? You're muted.
Sorry. I am not the computer person. I am definitely the one who sits and talks to the family on the phone all day. You know, I just, again, think that, first of all, let me just thank you for being here, because as someone who sits on the phone and listens to families all day long and talks to families, there is great need. There's great loneliness out there. People are feeling not only alone from even their own family members, the community, and sometimes their own churches. So just that you're taking the chance to come and learn and trying to be there. And I think that's the key. Is the biggest thing is that making yourself available. I talk to families for sometimes an hour to an hour and a half. Sometimes it's only 15 minutes, but sometimes I am giving them, they just need a place to talk to, someone to talk to. And even at the end of that conversation, sometimes there's an answer we can give them to help. There's many times we don't, but what I hear constantly is, thank you for the time. Time is so, you care about us, you took the time, and that's what matters. So I think as ministers, as congregations, first we just need to start with our time. And like I said, I really do feel that this is growing. We kind of knew it was going to happen. Some of us have been working in the field, knew this was growing, and it's getting bigger. And we knew that our country, nobody's prepared for what's coming. But you guys are the people that are going to make the hugest difference, because your hearts are there to care about people. You want to serve people. And so whether it be your own congregation or other people, I really think that you are the ones who are going to have to step up and help us, help them. And I think, again, I guess my biggest thing is all these things Lisa shared is such an important part of it. But just start by reaching out and by listening. And providing that to start with. It may sound simple, but I think it'll go a long way, and then you're going to learn other steps. So
Yes,
Absolutely, I would agree. As far as those specific visits, I would say when you're communicating with someone living with dementia, keep it simple.
Yeah.
Slow down. Give them time to respond to you. Don't act shocked if it's not the response you're expecting, and kind of go with the flow. If someone is acting out or behaving differently or using language that you're surprised by, please know that's part of dementia sometimes. And maybe you sit quietly for a moment and give them just time to calm down, and then you respond back. Maybe it's not a good time to visit them then, so maybe you need to make a visit at a different time, but always just keeping your emotions at a sort of a calm level, and that can help them feel your energy better. And so we don't want to go into, if someone is very quiet, and be like, hey, how are you today? It's so wonderful to see you. If they're calm and quiet, we want to be more on their level. You get greeted by the person that opens their arms up wide and says hello, and they're the huggers. They want you to touch them, but you may get someone who's giving you the body language that they don't really want to be touched at that moment. So maybe don't reach out and hold their hand, that sort of thing. Follow that person's lead. I see that we have a few more things here in the chat. Meet people where they are, and sometimes that means we're meeting them at age 8 and not age 78. Absolutely, that's the truth, and you never know. Validate the feelings they express rather than correcting, always. And another good thing is, if someone is really upset or frustrated, say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry goes a long way. Maybe you don't even know what they're talking about. You didn't do it, but I'm sure sorry that happened. Whether it really happened or not doesn't matter. That's what the person believes and feels. So Stephen Ministry can provide one-on-one care to someone with dementia as well. There's caregivers, and we actually do work with a lot of Stephen Ministry groups to do training and talking as well. As a lay minister, I understand what you're saying. to a comment before. Sherry says it saddens me that pastors often ignore families as well as members in memory care. And then Brad said, but my training has not included this type of visits. So yeah, it's scary to interact with someone who is really very angry, perhaps, and can't make sense of that anger, and maybe you don't understand them. You're not sure how to interact with that person. You have to take that person's lead. You have to know that they may or may not want to interact with you. And if they don't, they may just walk off. They may, like I said before, have inappropriate language. Sometimes that's the only language that remains in their brain. And in a normal situation, they wouldn't use that language with you, but if that's all they have, that's what they're going to use. So that can be shocking. People don't understand what's appropriate or inappropriate anymore. So if you're in a memory care, you may hear people yell, or you may walk by and someone has taken an article of clothing off. Again, all of that is not intentional, and we have to go, oh, well, that happened. Okay, that person needs a staff member, but in the meantime, I can help this person. Also, there are people that are in the very later stages of dementia who maybe are calling out or crying and maybe saying, I want to go home, I want to go home, I want to go home. Home is a state of mind. Home is a feeling. You may be visiting someone in their kitchen and they may want to go home, or you may be visiting someone in a memory care and they want to go home, and home is probably the same place to them. Home is where we're in control and we know where everything is, and we're not confused. We don't have dementia. So home is not usually a place. So you can ask people about, what do you love most about your home? Home is special, isn't it? But we don't want to say things like, well, what address would you like to go to? Because honestly, that person with dementia doesn't know. And probably even if you could take them to that place, it's not what they think it is. There's a lot more great comments about visiting.
Yeah, we got a couple of questions that came in, but I was going to just add to, just to sort of respond. I mean, grateful for folks like Brad and others who are on here to learn. And I think too, it gives us an opportunity to pause and think that the caregivers for these folks and also the people who were affected by dementia also weren't trained in this.
Exactly. They didn't raise their hands and say, yes, please let me be a caregiver.
And so it's like, let's lean into that, because they're right there with you. They weren't trained either. And so I'm so grateful that y'all are on here to learn, and just remember they weren't trained either. They just need someone to see them and to know they're not alone.
Can I share, if you get to the point that you're feeling like a support group may be good, or providing a respite program, when Good Shepherd started their memory cafe, they brought in some of us as professionals to be a part of it, to help train the ones that was going to do it and kind of be there for the first little bit. That was like 10 years ago, and I'm still going every month because I love it. But it's just because, but there's a church here just started a respite program once every few months, like once or twice a year, where the caregiver can drop their loved one off and get a break. And in order to make that successful, they have asked people from the community, like some professionals. There's a lot of people in the community too that are professionals that also love giving. So you might partner, especially get started out, so your volunteers are more comfortable too. Because I think when people say the church has walked away, I think the church wants to, we just don't know how. And we don't feel confident, like Lisa said. So if we can help provide that training to help you feel more comfortable, and then bring people in to partner with you, so you're doing it together, we're still in the bigger need. So remember, there are people out there that could do that.
I love that. That's great. And I think that's tremendous. Yeah, to kind of help with that comfort level. I know Nancy had raised her hand earlier, but then commented in the chat. So perhaps this is the question that Nancy had. Nancy said she was interested in more information on groups that might include a variety of people needing a break. Various things, not just dementia and whatnot. So I think, I mean, there are some best practices around support group leading that kind of transcend the specifics of it. And then, yeah, people are asking for
Yeah, we
different
have
ideas around
support groups that
Yeah.
are general caregiver support groups.
Yeah.
And then we also have groups that are just dementia. And then we have groups that are specific types of dementia. So there's a big variety. And I would say if you're thinking about starting a support group, talk to some of the people who maybe would come and ask them what they need. A lot of times we think, oh, this is exactly what everybody needs, but we don't go to those people and say, you know, what would get you to come here to be a part of this, and what do you need? And starting with a general support group for all caregivers might be a great way to do it, just to get the folks there. And then at some point it might grow to where you need to divide off into different types of caregivers, but maybe not.
I think that's great. I think Dee Dee was about to say something. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Went ahead and read Kimberly's right below that. And so Lisa was leading into that. So support groups, again, they're the general support groups, but then sometimes we find, we wish we had more of them, but that you could have people that just like Lewy body dementia. We talked about that. We have a lady here in Raleigh who does a Lewy body support group online, so the people across the state can join. And so they're just talking to caregivers of other people with dementia. I mean, Lewy body.
Yeah.
There are few programs that provide, like if you've got dementia and you're the care partner, there are programs that does both together, but that is a little bit planned out a little bit better, just for the fact that, you know, as the progression happens, but there are programs for that. There's daughter programs. So if you look, we don't have them all, but on our list, we have tried to break out some of those so that it is meeting the particular need of the different caregivers.
I see Sherry wrote Wellspring Solutions in Greensboro has an adult daycare program for people with dementia. It does cost, and there are other adult day programs across the state. So maybe just being aware of what programs are in your area to be able to help people when they say, oh, I really need something for him during the day. I wish I had something for him during the day. Then an adult daycare program may be the answer. We know that the majority of people with dementia do not live in memory care. Majority of people live at home with support. So we think about people living with Alzheimer's or memory problems all in a memory care and assisted living, but that's more often not the case. Most often they are living at home with a lot of supports. So while we do need to support those memory care programs and those paid caregivers there, as well as those families, there's a lot of caregivers at home with not a lot of help. And so that's a lot of what we do at Dementia Alliance. We try and really reach out to rural areas, a lot are underserved areas, because they don't have as many resources. But even in areas that do have a lot of resources, you know, if somebody needs a home health program and there's 100 companies to choose from, how do they make a decision? Where do you even start? That's so overwhelming. I could see where it could shut people down. So talking to people in the community, where do you go? What do you do for that? Talking to different agencies even to share materials is always a great way to start as well.
Thank you. That's so helpful. Let me look back at the chat because it got really busy. I did have a question come in from someone. I think it's fairly specific, but it might help. I know you'd spoken to what might be done if someone was to go to a nursing home or memory care unit and do a church service. What might it look like to support an individual who's in that kind of space? Because the question was related. It was related to a specific person, but I wanted to kind of broaden it a little bit. If someone's asking for support who is actually in a dementia care setting that's not in the home.
So in a dementia care setting, if you wanted to just go and visit a person, I would talk to that person's family. if they are available, and let them know you'd like to visit. And then they could, set that up for you. Or you can, go in and let the staff know that you're there to visit that particular person. And then they can show you where that person is, and you can interact with them one-on-one, maybe visit in their room, visit in a social area with them, just one-on-one. If you want to do more of a group thing or a program or a service, you would probably want to reach out to that staff ahead of time. You could talk to, for example, the director, but I would actually reach out to the activity director. They come with different names, lifestyle or whatever, but pretty much everybody knows if you talk to the activity director, they're the ones that set the schedules of all the different programs that the residents do. They're the ones that interact directly with those residents day in and day out and setting those up. So you may offer to do a program, and they may say, great, we have, I think 5 residents right now who would be interested. And you could say, okay, what time is best for them? What day is best for them? And then work that out with that activity person. They may also have specific suggestions for you depending on the people that are going to be attending that service, knowing that you may walk in and things may be totally different than you planned. And that's a key thing of anybody with dementia is whatever you plan, it may totally change by the time you get there. You may have an agenda, and then you may get there and 3 different things happen, and then people come in and come out, and you just never know. And that could be at someone's house as well. So you really have to be prepared to be very flexible and go with the flow. If you are a person who really needs to be in control, trying to lead a program at a memory care neighborhood may not be for you, honestly. A one-on-one visit might be better, just because it's sort of controlled chaos sometimes while you're there, just because you have so many different people at different levels. People in memory care are not all at the same level. And then I would say too, as people progress with their dementia, they're going to become more withdrawn into themselves. And so someone who is at the later stages may very much do better with a one-on-one visit than a group visit. And so you may want to go and visit the community first and take a look around and see the types of people and interact with them a little bit first, and then come up with your plan or your idea.
That's wonderful. That's really helpful. We just have a few more minutes. I just wanted to, if anyone else has maybe like one more question or so. But I wanted to thank you, because I feel like these are a lot of really great ideas that are adaptable for different budgets, for different congregation sizes. It doesn't have to be a huge, heavy, expensive lift, the presence and whatnot. And I also appreciate the ideas of including people multi-generationally in this work. I think part of growing that comfortability around being present with families and caregivers and with folks who are living with dementia is kind of leaning in and learning and being present, from a young age, and kind of removing the stigma and removing that uncomfortability. And so just really grateful for those suggestions. Does anyone else have any other questions that they have for Lisa and Dee Dee?
I had a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm sorry I can only do the telephone today. Is there any guidance on if a person was put into a dementia memory care unit by a power of attorney, but they really don't want to be there, nor do they need to be there? How would one go about trying to get them help? I keep being asked for, how can I get her help so that she can get back control of her resources and whatnot. And I just, at this point, I'm at a loss as to even, I don't know of an attorney or anything like that. So I just don't even know where to try to get any guidance, if it should be a church or or how to kind of step in, or if I even should. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the question.
I'm going to use an answer that Dee Dee doesn't generally like me to say, but I think you should call Dee Dee. There's so many ins and outs with what you just said, and so many one-off kind of things. I think that there's a lot to explore there and unpack, and probably not something we could just give you an easy answer to, unfortunately, but I think that you could reach out and go through some of those specifics. Again, I'll put our information in the chat, but a lot of times there's a lot more to the
Can't read the
story.
chat. I'm only on the telephone. I'm sorry.
we can
Could you
send
tell
out-
me what that is, and I could give someone a call, or?
Okay, good. Well, did you want to give the number, or we'll send a follow-up email as well, and we can get that information in the follow-up email to
That'd be
you.
wonderful. Thank you very much.
Of course, yes, you got it. And then Brad, I believe, has his hand
Yeah,
up.
mine's more of a comment than a question, but in dealing with dementia folks who are in memory care, what I have found is I go visit when I know family's there, and the visit is more for the family. I mean, the patient is listening and all, but it's the conversation with the family, giving them support is just as important from from what I've seen as the patient themselves. And so in trying to include them in conversation and what's your memories of your parent or sibling or whatever the relationship is, and just giving them that support as much as it is to the patient themselves.
I would totally agree with you. Especially if someone is in memory care, they have built-in caregivers and programs and all of those kinds of things, but those caregivers don't necessarily have built-in supports. And so a lot of times having those conversations with caregivers is so important. It really can boost someone up, like Dee Dee said, and like you're kind of saying, just to be heard is so important. So important. So thank you for that.
Yes, thanks, Brad. Like anything that kind of helps keep people feeling like they're isolated in this, I think is so crucial. Well, we just have a few minutes. I want to be mindful of time. I wanted to thank Lisa and Dee Dee again for coming out and well, not out, but on and sharing with us today. These are just some tremendous ideas. And of course, we'll send these out in a follow-up. I don't know if y'all want to put your emails in the chat again for everyone as we're wrapping up. For those of you who are on, if you want a little bit more information about creating a more inclusive congregation and health ministry, which includes this sort of dementia supports for caregivers and folks living with dementia, you can go to our website at healthandwholeness.org/PHW-inclusion-plans, and we have our healthy aging inclusion plan on there, which is a workbook that you could work through. If you have questions, of course, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to assist you, also to get you in touch with folks. And then in terms of county by county resources in general around aging, in terms of what counties offer, on our website, we also do have an interactive map. So often there might be a council on aging or area agency on aging that can also get you in touch with some caregiver related support and respite support in terms of sometimes even just funding for that. My email's there. The Dementia Alliance of North Carolina website is on that slide as well, and we will send these out later. Again, thank you, Lisa and Dee Dee. We'll just wrap up. We usually wrap up with just a quick few deep breaths. We'll just take some deep breaths together. I won't breathe too hard because I'll get in a coughing fit because I'm getting really cold. But thank you so much. I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for y'all. I'm grateful for everyone who came on here today. And for everyone who's partnering with us and with the folks in their communities in this work. I hope you have a beautiful afternoon and a blessed day. Thank you again.